1, 0. Ignition, liftoff, Semper and high.
And as promised, a very special guest. We had him on before the election. You loved him. And so we had to have him back to help make sense of all that's happened the last 10 days since Election Day. State Representative Vernon Jones from Georgia, the Democrat who dared to support Donald Trump, joins us again. Representative, good to have you on the show again.
Thank you, John, for having me. I wasn't sure if you liked me enough. You know, it took you long enough to get me back on here.
Oh, we loved you, trust me. And more importantly, our listeners and viewers loved you. That's all that mattered. So that's great.
Yeah.
We're so honored to have you on. So help us understand what we're going through in this country right now. Let's start with your home state of Georgia. What's the latest? What do you make of Georgia right now?
Well, John, let me tell you, there's a couple things happening here. But right quick, first of all, there's litigation moving forward. We've hired Lynn Wood.
Right, tremendous lawyer.
Him,
right?
The young man's, he is amazing. So he's fought through the lawsuit. At the same time, there's been pressure on the Secretary of State to have this recount. So he's announced yesterday there will be a recount. It takes about 5 days. And I mean, it's going to be a hand count recount, John.
Old-fashioned.
If you will. Yes. And so when you talk about 5 million ballots cast, and when you look at you have 159 counties in Georgia, everybody at the local level will be doing the recount. And John, I think one of the biggest things that people are more concerned about than anything else was those mail-in ballots. And as you know, that's what the president talked about, and that's where the exposure is on a lot of this election fraud. And I call it election fraud versus voter fraud. The Democrats want to say there's no voter fraud, and when somebody votes and they're dead, that's election fraud. Right. All right. And so when you look at ballots haven't been signed, when you look at even their signatures, where these machines are with software, that's another thing that's being looked at, the software and the hardware and these machines, do they recognize signatures? So there's enough there, John, to really move forward with addressing these concerns. The voters should be, and they are concerned about it. Here's what I don't understand. The Democrats always talk about a free and transparent election. Who complained more about voter fraud than Stacey Abrams and her group? And so here they are. The Democrats do not want us to count these ballots again. The election is close. The irony of the hypocrisy of it, John.
Yeah, it's remarkable how the tables were turned from 2018 when so many of the Democrats were yelling foul to today. What do you make of the turnout? I mean, you've been in this state and in politics for 30 years, you've been at the top of service, and you know how the state operates. We know the president turned out his vote. How did so much Democrat vote turn out? And, are you confident that there's real, when we say election fraud, people who did not vote that are listed as voted? Do you think there are shadow votes, dead voters? How confident are you that there's a substantial number of bad votes in this election?
John, if you go back and look at this carefully, who have been pushing from day one on mail-in ballots? It's been the Democrats. Right. It's been Stacey Abrams and her group Unfair Fight. That's the biggest exposure in this election, those mail-in ballots. Now, when you break that down with 5 million votes, and a difference of 12,000. The president's people came there that day and voted that day. That day of the election, it shouldn't be that much still of a difference between election day and early voting. And I tell you why, or let's say mail-in ballots, because many people who were scared by the pandemic, although it's serious, don't get me wrong. Right. A lot of seniors and others, and not necessarily those who are frail seniors, but a lot of those well seniors who felt like, okay, I think I'm going to send my ballot in. I'll vote through the mail-in ballot. Well, it's strange. I think you should have had a lot higher number for the president in those ballots. So either the election was about even Steve with those mail-in ballots, or there was an emphasis so much on mail-in ballots where they were ballot harvesting. Right. And I think that's where the issue, and that's what the president spoke about.
And let's be clear, in Georgia, ballot harvesting is illegal, right? It's not appropriate for people to come and round up people's votes for them, right?
Right. Right, it's illegal.
Have you found any evidence of it? I mean, you have great intelligence on the ground. You know the people, the streets, the incredible activists in the state. Do you see any sign of ballot harvesting? Have you detected anyone that said, "Yeah, my ballot was harvested"?
John, the emails that I received and the phone calls that I received, that's just me as a legislator. It's across the board. We're seeing irregularities across the board. I know how some try to narrow in. Well, give me specific evidence here. Well, for example, which is within the whole rim, the largest precinct in the state of Georgia, in Fulton County,
Atlanta area, yep.
In the Atlanta area, when poll watchers, who by law they can be there, when poll watchers were told that we're through counting ballots right now, we're tired, staff is tired, we're going to let everybody go home, the poll watchers leave, they lock the door, and they count for another 3 hours. And there's a local media outlet here that agreed and was there when they were put out. And so when you look at this thing in totality, that's why I talk about election fraud. There were just so many different things going on. But I believe with that recount, I believe that certainly would swing in the president's favor, because I believe a lot of those ballots will be thrown out. And as those ballots are thrown out, I think that favors the president without a doubt.
Do you have any sense that any state law enforcement agencies, like the State Bureau of Investigations, whether any police agencies are looking at matters in Atlanta? We know the Secretary of State started the recount. We know there are civil matters, but any sense that any criminal investigations are underway in the Georgia area?
You know what? That's what many of us are kind of concerned about, the Attorney General Chris Carr. You know, is he so concerned about the election 2022, where he's up for re-election, that he's not coming out making a bold stand? Matter of fact, have you heard anything from him? That's sort of ironic. You haven't heard anything from the attorney. Been very quiet. Something's there. Again, either they're that afraid of their election, don't want to stand up for what's right, but they don't know if they don't stand up today, the same thing can happen to them in 2022 when they're up for re-election. And so, you know, John, it takes people with courage to stand up for what is right. And the AG is standing up for every voter, not just Republicans, but Democrats too. The AG should have been the first one out. And as a matter of fact, the Secretary of State was called out by the 2 U.S. senators, and they basically said, look, you're not doing your job. You really failed overall, and you should resign. And so, John, you know this thing. You know how it is. When the shoe is on the other foot, then they want to make noise. But right now, they're looking at I believe, their election in 2022. And by the way, let's be clear about something, John. No blue wave came through Georgia. Yeah. When you look at the Georgia legislature, where was across the country? Maybe a water gun, but no blue waves.